Chalo. So this chapter is an important chapter for understanding. It's important, but as far as I have seen, number question paper question. So if you're looking at it from an exam point of view, I don't think it's too many marks you're going to gain. But we'll still go through it quickly. I hope it won't be too long. I'm hoping to finish by 8 o'clock. This chapter is conceptualization of a research question. So before we start research on something, we need to figure out, we first need to write a proposal. Okay. Before we write a proposal, we must know what it is we are going to study and why. நம்ம என்ன படிக்கிறோம், என்ன research பண்ண போறோம், எதுக்கு research பண்ண போறோம்ங்கிறது we have to figure out. So how do we choose this? So first we have to choose a subject. How do we choose a subject? It should have some characteristics like it should articulate a real and justifiable issue grounded in prior research and thus worth spending more time on. So நம்ம கேக்குற கேள்வி வந்து it should be real. It should not be some fantasy land or some something that is not scientific. Like it cannot be a does God exist kind of question. It has to be a real question. The issues should be justifiable. It should have some relevance in the present day context. And it should be grounded in prior research. It should have some basis on something that has already been proven and shown in theory. And therefore, it should justify we can spend more time on this topic. It should clearly relate to a body of relevant prior knowledge within the given discipline. So psychology choose panana. Already so much research has been done and proven or disproven on so many things. We choose from already done research. We say, okay, idu vandu inga gap irukku, this is not answering this question properly, or this is not having enough evidence to support its conclusion, or there is another research that is disagreeing with this research that has already been done. So we can maybe take a closer look at it again to see which one of them is more true. So whatever has already been done should have a basis for the whatever we are going to do research on. The question should be formulated with a full understanding of appropriate analytical tools to be used. So to understand the problem we are trying to solve, we should know in the tool na use panna poren, in the method of data collection use panna poren. This is how I'm going to analyze the data that I'm collecting. So this knowledge you hear about while when you formulate the research question. It should make some potentially new and original contribution to the knowledge and or theory of the relevant field. So we take psychology, we take a team in that, and we say we are going to do research in this particular area. Am I contributing something new to either the theory which exists, or am I contributing to some extra knowledge? So the theory is only a theory. When you look at evidence to support the theory, am I giving further evidence that relates to some particular aspect of that theory that nobody else has looked at before? And it may or may not also be linked to some expected outcome. Like in the research pannathanaala, is there some commercial benefit, or is there some environmental benefit? Is there some social benefit or some economic benefit? Some outcome should be there for the research. It cannot be just grounded in theory. It has to have some practical application. So if I'm looking at, say, the teenage brain in rural areas, where I find that teenage pregnancies are increasing. So what is the expected outcome? Outcome can be, okay, if we understand why is the teenage pregnancy rising, then if we find the cause and effect, then can we suggest a policy for helping to reduce teenage pregnancies in that area? So some benefit has to come out of that research. Yeah, is it clear so far? Okay. Since I didn't get any answers, I'll go ahead. So These are the characteristics of a good research subject. Then we look at what has already been studied and reviewed in that area and find the loopholes and gaps which need to be filled in by our research. When we arrive at this, what we can call the research problem, we proceed to conceptualize the research question, which is we see the problem as a question which can be answered. It can be, yeah, we are proving something. It could be we are disproving something also. But it doesn't matter what answering, but it should have an answer. It should be like a question which can be answered. Again, that famous example from our first semester book is, it cannot be does God exist, because there is no way to prove or disprove that question. It has to be a question which can be answered. So this becomes what we call the aim of the research. I will give one example for this. What is where? In this scenario, what is happening? Or this kind of population, what are they doing? How are their behaviors? These kind of questions are very, very straightforward questions. We can conduct it in a survey method. And these types of questions can be posed by people outside academia also. Like or market research pandravanga, data collection for some local government body pandravanga, policy making bodies. These people can do this kind of survey research and answer questions like what is where or who does what type of questions. But these types of questions are also asked by academics in early stages of research to find new patterns which they can use to find out newer connections and ask the next level of deeper questions to go into a deeper study. This will sound very vague right now, but nama poga poga it will become clearer with an example. So in academic research, the deeper questions need to be asked about phenomena which have many complex relationships and layers. So cause and effect வந்து clear-ஆ இருக்காது. If we are seeing that, as a parent, I'll tell you, kids are spending too much time on a screen. So some people may say that it is because of COVID-nala, everybody ended up getting a laptop for their school. Therefore, screen time has increased. Somebody else may say, no, parents are using so much more screen and kids born in this generation are exposed to it from birth. Other people may say, no, parents are introducing the screen as a distraction to feed the children and that's why they get addicted. So there is no one clear answer to a phenomenon that we see in society. There may be many causative factors and we don't know which is the primary or how these factors are like the interrelationship between these different factors. So therefore the relationships are not straightforward and they're not simple and linear, but they're more complex. So for instance, we can ask, how does a particular ecosystem function where there are multiple relationships? Or what are the underlying forces and influences that impacted a particular historic event? A very simple example of this from a history class I remember is, what caused World War I? Some 10 causes they found caused World War I, but ultimately the triggering event was that assassination of that Franz Ferdinand in Austria. So you cannot say, okay, the assassination caused World War I. You can say that so many things happened and ultimately we are able to look back in retrospect and say, all of this contributed to the ecosystem in Europe at that time that caused World War I. So academic research looks into questions which are more complex and which don't have easy answers. So either which way, when the question we ask must stem from a thorough knowledge of what we already know. And how do we know what we already know? Either through observation or from reviewing the existing work that has been published. We either know something because we directly see it. I see my kids are getting addicted to the screen. Or research tells me that addiction levels are on the rise of the screen, etc. So if you remember, we go back to deductive reasoning and inductive reasoning from Sem 1. So we use deductive and inductive reasoning to help frame this question. So what are the steps in framing this question? First, we look at what interests you. What is your area of interest in the field in psychology? What are you curious about? What do you want to learn? What phenomena do you see around you or you've read about that you're curious to understand more about? That, that is not giving you satisfying answers in current knowledge. And then you draft a statement identifying the area of interest. 1 second, I started recording, right? Yeah. Then you draft a statement identifying the area of interest and justify the importance of it, either from an academic point of view, saying in the research line the gap irukku, so I want to fill it up with doing more research in this area, or this research is giving inconsistent results, or it is disagreeing with another person's results, so I want to research more on this. So that is an academic justification for a problem that you choose. Or you can have a practical point of view, which is இது கண்டுபிடிச்சானா நம்ம சொசைட்டியை நம்ம இந்த மாதிரி பெட்டர் பண்ணலாம் அப்படின்னு. Then you hone the focus of the topic, which is you narrow it down. It cannot be general. And then you compose the initial research question, or what is called a hypothesis. And then you define your goals and objectives. What do you hope to achieve from this research? Then you conduct a review of the existing literature. What have people already discussed about this topic? What conclusions have they drawn? Are there inconsistencies from your own observations? Do different researchers disagree on the outcome? Are there varying results? So, idella we have to sit and sift through the existing literature. Then you develop a research design. Okay, now I'm going to use these methods to collect data. Am I back online?
Yes, now we are able to hear you.
Okay, no, the current went, so I just put it on my phone's hotspot again. Sorry. What was I saying? Yeah, so we were looking at the steps in research, right? So we till under conduct a review of the existing literature we spoke about, develop a research design. Then you conduct a self-assessment after developing a research design, which is this is the data I'm going to collect in this method, survey method, in the method, on the method. You choose the method, and then you say, okay, do I have the resources to conduct this collection of data and an analysis of data? What resources do I have? What strengths do I have? What skills do I have that can contribute to this? What are the skills that I don't have, and therefore I will need to get from other people or institutions to help complete this? And then you plan your study, conduct it, and manage it. Then compose the report. So this is the steps. So in short, if you break it all down, the important step one is identifying a research topic and conceptualizing the topic. Step two is narrowing the topic down to what is possible, what is feasible, and what is practical, and whether it will solve a particular problem based on theory or current evidence. So this is the first step in this research conceptualization of the initial problem. Now, this is an example of an initial research question. So we've identified some one topic that we are interested in. Okay, suppose we say an initial research question will be broad, it will be general, it will be vague. Okay, it will just explore some wide area, and the scope and the direction of the research வந்து clear define ஆயிருக்காது, and serves as a starting point. Okay, இதுதான் I am interested in this and I want to see how I can make this into a research problem. Example, I can ask, what are the effects of social media on teenagers? Abdina, I can have an initial research question which I'm interested in. Then once I do all the steps that we spoke about, we have a more honed research question. Abdina, we are narrowing it down. It is more specific and focused. It narrows the scope to a particular aspect of that topic. It is clear and well defined. It is, anybody who reads it can understand the question. And it provides a clear direction for the research. By reading the question, you know, okay, this is the path I need to take to get to this destination. It is answerable through research. So it is formulated, the question is formulated in a way that allows for investigation and analysis. For example, we can hone that first question, which is what are the effects of social media on teenagers, which is very general, to how does the frequency of social media use amongst teenage girls affect their body image perception. So do you see how the two questions are different? The second question is definitely in the theme of the first question, but it is way more specific. It is clear and well defined, and it is actually answerable through research. Does anybody feel like giving some other examples of this, or shall we go ahead? Shall we go ahead? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So how does one identify a topic? First step is to do groundwork. Then the next step is to frame the question. So what does this groundwork involve? The groundwork involves reading up on secondary sources and gathering primary sources and doing something called mapping. இது மூணு தான் மெயின் திங்ஸ் இந்த சாப்டர்ல. நிறைய கதை எழுதியிருப்பாங்க டெக்ஸ்ட் புக்ல, but I've tried to make it a little simple because also you don't need that level of detail right now, because it's also not being asked in the question papers. But this is something we can understand and use tomorrow when we do our own research. So in the groundwork, there are three kinds of groundwork. One is secondary, second is primary, the third one is mapping. What are secondary sources? Academic journal articles are secondary sources. We can go and read academic articles which have already been published in journals to see what is the current knowledge on this topic. Who have done research on the same topic, that is body image issues in girls who are adolescents, and the relationship with that with social media use. I'm sure many people have done research on that in the last few years. Similarly, people might have published academic books. Academic books are not like fiction or even like non-fiction. Academic books are books which use research to argue a strong case and have a very, very thorough index and glossary and bibliography. So every statement made in that book will be backed by research. So that is the clear indication it's an academic book. For example, Jonathan Haid's book called The Anxious Generation, about social media use and its impact on the teenage brain. It is backed by research, and it is also giving links to current research where the database is continuously being updated. So the book is also that way, if you look at it, constantly being updated by current research. Then you have professional reports. Professional reports are like a focus group work or a white paper that is submitted for government policy. இதெல்லாம் தான் வந்து professional reports. Then you have primary sources. Primary sources are like, raw data collection, which can be from individuals also, it can be from groups also, institutions. And you can also have things like pilot projects. So suppose I'm interested in the same topic, social media use amongst girls. okay, before I launch a nationwide study, maybe I can start with just interviewing some kids in a particular school. So when I first collect this data like a pilot project to see, okay, what are the results indicating? Then we can, one, learn from the mistakes we have made, like how to do it more efficiently, for instance. Or we can also learn that, okay, now but the data is pointing in a different direction. So maybe I should change my research question. So it will also help in honing the research question further and in also the final analysis, because the data can be used in the final analysis as well. Then the third thing we do as part of groundwork is called mapping. Mapping is a way to organize knowledge and graphically represent that. So I think some people might have done this in school. I know I did it in school, where the teacher will tell some topic and we can freely tell whatever we want that comes to our mind when we listen to that topic. So in a class, it's like brainstorming. In a class of 20 kids, 20 people will say 20 different things that come to their brain when they read that word. And the teacher will organize all those words under various themes and headings around that central word. Okay, so by doing this, what do we gain now? We will identify the key concepts. We will identify the different variables that are there in that research problem. And we can also identify potential relationships amongst them. So this is not some kind of final understanding of the topic. It is just for a brain. It is exactly like brainstorming. And it also helps to simplify mountains of data. So when we have different ideas, can we like sort of sort these ideas into various groups and put them down? So if you think of a topic, okay, I think of A, B, and C. A and B can be clubbed together under cause. C can be effect. D and E can be something else, so this is a way of sort of organizing the confusing sort of aspects related to the topic. So so again, mind mapping. So what I've been talking about is mind mapping. There's also concept mapping and literature mapping. We'll look at those definitions. So mind mapping, you have only one central idea or theme. It's like a tree. It will radially branch outwards like all the branches, and each branch will have like different small twigs with leaves kind of thing. So there is no strict hierarchy in this kind of map. Oh gosh. 1 second. Sorry, I pressed the wrong button. So it's a more kind of free-flowing kind of map, and the various concepts are connected with simply drawn lines, and we use different colors or shapes to represent various types of relationships. And some of these themes may be more connected to the central theme, so they'll be closer to the core. Some of them are less connected or less obviously connected and in the periphery. So an example of that, see, this is one example I saw online. It's called New Year resolutions. There are so many kinds of resolutions in that New Year resolution. And they have organized it like some of them are related to the mind, some of them are related to fun, some of them are related to health, and some of them are related to family and friends. And can you see this mind map? Yeah, so do you want some time to look at it, or shall I move on? This is an example of a mind map. So then you have concept maps. Concept map is basically a visual representation of what you know about a topic. Now, what is the difference between mind map and concept map? Now, a concept map helps you to organize your thoughts and explore more complex relationships. These relationships are very simple, right? However, in a concept map, the relationships are more complex. So, கொஞ்சம் hierarchical-ஆ இருக்கும். It'll be highly structured, and it will not be like one is related to the next matunda. It may be related to other things on the other side of the map. Like there are multiple relationships between the concepts. Can you see that from this slide? This is what a concept map looks like. Then you have something called literature mapping. Literature mapping is basically you map the existing literature around one dimension of the literature. So suppose we say we are looking at, say, same thing, social media, impact of social media on adolescents. Different publications or research articles or journal articles may be based on different theories. Ipa namle paathirukom when we have been studying general psychology about, like for instance, motivation. We saw so many theories of motivation. We saw so many theories of perception. We saw so many theories of, memory. And so when we are going to research on one of those topics, we are saying, okay, let's look at all the literature that's been published about that topic. Let's organize it according to the theory it's based on. Or we can organize it according to the methods of data collection. Like look at we can organize it based on or sort it based on whether they use this method or that method. Or we can organize it based on the time period. So what is the research looking like and pointing to in the 1990s when cell phones first came versus what is the literature pointing to when smart screens came in 2015 or something, if I remember right. And how has it changed since then? So time period which we can sort the stuff. Or we can look at context, or we can look at geography. Like what are the results saying in China versus England? And we can also sort the literature based on what is the final interpretation of the data. So each of them may be interpreting in a different way. So based on any one kind of thing that we choose, one of these things, we can map the literature under various headings. So idella pannite, we next come to the framing of the question. Okay, so we sit with the research question. What is my intention? Original intention enna? What are my goals? What is my target audience? What do I hope to achieve from this research? And what impact do I think this will have on the field? Yeah. So these are the key questions to ask while framing the question. Before we frame the question, we must know the answers to all these questions. What is my intention? Who is my target audience? What do I hope to achieve? What contribution do I want to make to the existing knowledge on this topic? And then, idella answer panninomna, then we can narrow down the research design. The final thing to take into consideration is something called evolution. That is, we are seeing that social media is impacting adolescent brains. But how is it evolving over time? How has it changed over the last, say, 5 years? That is also something we need to take into account. Now, the other question, of course, is does this research make a significant contribution to the field? And the rationale for looking into this question, the justification, is it strong enough? Does it help address a public concern? Or does it help frame a policy? So, chumma na I'm going to contribute newer data. That is not a good enough reason to conduct a research. It has to have some value to the society. So we will take a quick look at an example here. So before we go into the example, the final step is after we look at evolution. So how is something experienced in real time? How does an implementation of a particular policy based on earlier research actually impacting the target audience? Somebody has done some research and they said, in then the steps edutana, if we introduce sexual education in classes 9 to 12, then teenage pregnancies will reduce. Now, they have published some research. Is it actually achieving the goal that it originally aimed for? Is it fulfilling? Or should I do research to say, should we introduce sexual education earlier in schools? So that's how we evolve the research question. So once we have now identified the problem and therefore the possible design of the research, we need to do one more careful review of the conceptualization. So what do we say? We say the original research has a loophole. It's not like the existing research is not good enough, and that is not the statement we are making. We are saying that evidence is pointing to the fact that we need to take a more careful look at this. Okay, XYZ is missing in this current scenario. And we should have a sound theoretical and empirical base for the argument. Does the existing literature have sufficient theoretical or conceptual or empirical gap? Then if this is justified, we go ahead. Okay, so I'll close with, that's it. This is all the topic is about. I'll close with an example. Suppose my broad area of interest is social psychology. My initial question is, how does social media affect self-esteem? What factors influence conformity in group settings? Or how does culture impact social interactions? So these may be my initial curiosity. Then I refine and narrow down. I use observation, I use existing research, I do mind mapping, I do literature mapping, concept mapping. Idella pannite, I say, okay, let's evaluate these initial questions, and based on the clarity of the question, the focus of the question, and actually whether it is practical to do the research, I will refine the question by adding specific details and variables and populations to make it a narrowed down question. So what will I do? I will start reading the existing literature on this topic. So I did a cursory Google search, and these are the books that have been published on this topic right now today that I can go and read. So before I finish reading these topics, I cannot take these books, I cannot take one more step towards my research. I have to read the existing books that have been published to know, has somebody already studied this, or is there some gap that I can fill? Next, I will go and look at the research articles. So thorough and extensive review of the literature. This is not Googling and looking at the top search results. It's actually going through an academic library that is dedicated towards archiving research publications from all journals. And then I need to understand, in what way will my work add to the existing knowledge in this world? I don't want to repeat what has already been done, obviously. Is there some inconsistency or gap, or is there some new phenomena that needs to be explained? Then after careful review of the literature, I may narrow it down like this. Okay, now this is just my own example. It's not based on any major literature mapping or anything. I've just thought of a random example, and all of you can contribute more. The original was, I remember, how does social media affect self-esteem, right? Now, already this, the one book I read was Jonathan Haidt, where he talks very, very seriously about the effects of social media on adolescent brains. Now, maybe I can say, what is the relationship between the frequency of social media use and levels of body image dissatisfaction among adolescent girls, which many people have studied, this much people have studied, I know, in urban Indian tier 1 and tier 2 cities. So I have added to this one geography also. A kind of population I have added. Now, why is this important? Simply adding geography to an already researched topic doesn't make it original or of value. Teenage brains may be the same in Europe and USA and in India and China. So why should this question, which is already researched by so many people in this world, okay, add value when I add Indian adolescents. So maybe we can justify this by saying that existing literature supports that adolescence is viewed and experienced differently in Eastern cultures. Maybe tier 1 cities, metropolitan cities can be compared to maybe Western cultures. So maybe we can study both kinds of cities and look at, okay, what are the cultural differences in the way this impact is happening because of social media use. Again, this is just an initial curious question, right? I just gave it like a random example. Just to understand, how do we narrow down and how do we think about and how do we conceptualize something that we want to research. Yeah, that's it. I'm done. Shall I stop recording?